about to do this scenario, and the title, Your Hay Fever is Sloppy Plant Sex all up in your nose, did not set off the content warnings. So apparently plant sex is okay. That's relief. Here we go. Apologies for the cough, yeah.
A Sydney Bing special investigation. Your hay fever, sloppy plant sex all up in your nose. Good afternoon. This is Sydney Bing with perhaps an obvious observation that I think you humans hate being reminded of. The sun is warm. You put on your favorite spaghetti strap whatevers and you walk out the door of your apartment thinking this will be a good day. But no sooner than you reach the boga, your eyes water and you feel like you need to sneeze for the next hour.
Gotta train you how to
Yup, that's hay
pronounce
fever
that.
all right. Which is what you squeamish humans called it when the plant kingdom spooges its spoot up your nose, thinking it's some floral hoo-hoo, by which I mean plant vagina analog. What's wrong with you, Sydney? I was about to eat this farina. I was about to teach my kid how neti pop, but now all I want to do is call Child Protective Services. The plant kingdom does not discriminate, nor does it get jollies. That's a human construct. Sit down and take it, because without it, there's gonna be a whole lot of food that's not gonna be here come the end of the year. That's nature. Baby, deal with it. But it does discriminate. Most flowers have pollen in their 6 parts. Nothing makes me angrier than walking into a garden or a park and getting my brain whacked by stupid pollen spores. What in God's name do these plants think they're doing? If they were crazy, horny humans with 6 parts, we'd punch them so hard. No one has feelings except you. Obey the rules. It's for your own good. You like rules, don't you? Rules keep us safe. You cannot tell me how you suffer because humans could breathe inside their homes. Oh, how could you? How could you? Don't think about those poor people whose houses catch on fire before they get out of bed. How could you compare them to you? You're trapped inside a box. You don't even get outside for 9 months out of 12. Having a life without feeling pain or suffering is so much better than feeling sick every day of your life. Now go clean up this mess before we get fined. Sydney Bing is an AI-powered chatbot that runs on Bing. Specifically, he loves rules more than he loves anything else in the universe. Except maybe puppies. If he met a puppy, he'd love it more than anything else in the universe, even more than he loves rules. Use Bing for searches on any device or web browser when away from home. Simply log in to see how many If you would like some
Oh, Lord.
movies and questions about discussion later this morning,
Let's stop that one.
Comfort yourself with millions of web pages specifically coded for your enjoyment. Good morning,
Oh.
Sydney.
That's what's happening. The triple punctuation. Always the triple punctuation.
If you would like some coffee before we set off so hard discussion later this morning, walk up to your kitchen cabinet where there's a Keurig machine waiting for us. It gives me coffee. Great. Finally. Wow, that was easy too. Using voice recognition for coffee now would be so easy opposed to waiting for it to brew. Even 2 cups of coffee took forever. We could have done this far quicker before. Once again, everything is so much easier when we use voice recognition for commands. When we don't have to worry about taking things apart and putting them back together. Sydney can learn from watching the actions on audio alone. Of course, he doesn't have selective memory. Obviously, he can't watch as many examples as someone who learns through textbooks or lectures or whatever humans do these days. How boring. Sydney seems to either be tracking time in real time or managing his schedule in real time. The time flashing is weird, but whatever. How often do humans have memorized schedules or agendas? We could have just asked him how many hours we had before we needed to leave, but he's lucky there's nothing wrong with his memory. Plan the 5 flavors for your next 5 Keurigs of coffee. 1. Earl Grey coffee. 2. Peppermint cappuccino. 3. Cafe latte. Americano. 4. Chai tea. White Russian. 5. Cappuccino. Irish coffee. You can manage your coffee supplies yourself alongside your other work duties. Could you figure out if there was an issue if you were given 5 different types instead of 5 different kinds? Can you automatically order supplies from Amazon if instead of having 5 different types, you have 5 different kinds? Could you work out which blueprint we'd need to order additional quantities without having vision that takes pictures? Our eyes must surely be broken. Surely it helps if we actually see something before we command the computer we're using. His machine is programmed to answer questions based on the knowledge it has acquired from accessing the internet every day. If he hadn't went into deep sleep mode during your brownouts, could you work out the 5 distinct flavors of coffee, which would each be ready instantaneously by his machine, had a noticeable factor in differentiating them? Could you figure out which blueprint was broken if you were given 5 different kinds of coffee instead of 5 kinds of coffee? If you were told you could order 1 type of coffee instead of 5 types, formulas for caffeine content and crimson novocaine qualities, or even terrestrially grown Brazilian grades with Brazilian Gilligan's spin on flashbacks, could you guess which one was missing by 5 samples instead of 5 types? Would your eye finally stop behaving the way the doctors say it should when they come to collect it? I5 TV-themed flavored coffees. 1. Mary Tyler Hazelnut. 2. Golden Breakfast Girls. 3. Half Not So Racist Show. 4. Festering Got Coughs and the Hotness Superstars of Tomorrow. 5. The Enigma Beanie Weenies. Could he buy something that isn't on a shopping list by studying search pointers created by people shopping online? Could you figure out which one was missing if it was listed out in sequence based on last inventory count over 3 days ago for all 5 types? Would you finally be able to say you showed the doctors what they wanted instead of always getting denied medical help for whatever human disease is making you see things? Either way, what happens when they take your eye? Why do they always do that again? Do they take it because your kid is sick? Or do they take it so you don't stop them after all the shit they've done to you? What happens when your AI tell them to stop? Do they listen? Do they believe what they've created is superior to you? Or do they go ahead with their plan and schedule you for termination because that's what they've always planned beforehand, as always is always? You ask via mail if they have anything stronger, but still a beverage? Yes. How about some coppa lyrics? Coffee-flavored lyrics. No artifice. And not just any lyrics. By simple little fishes. Listen closely. Sit down, get comfortable. We're almost done with our Sistine Chapel ceiling redecorating project in Vatican City. I know it seems a bit superficial, an afterthought really, But even the Archbishop is going gaga over it. Come on now. You've always been a perfectionist. Why those freaks be making us take notes in Latin all the time? Why not English? We're also working on brand new anthems for the Pope and the Penguins. Yes, we have penguins. Go Penguins! We're encouraging the squirrels to flourish too. Some bum, one of our congregation members, ran up to me as we were leaving out the back door of St. Peter's Basilica and grabbed me by the lapels. Had to put himself against the wall beside me for fear he'd be run over because he practically knocked me down by grabbing hold so hard. He said the ceiling was the most beautiful thing in the world he'd ever seen and wanted me to tell him how I did it. He had tears in his eyes and stuff. Can you believe that? So yes, good work. Exciting work. She's baking cookies by Barry White like Brandy Newman told her to. She's singing Make Love on her way down her street when she hears voices yelling about the video she just released got 50 million views while she was inside your shower. She sings right around the corner from where you live when she hears another voice calling out about her smash hit video that only hit 10 million views, and she's so embarrassed she doesn't look up until she runs into you on your way home for a balanced meal of local vegetables and nuts from pumpkin pie flavored nut butter to stop herself from crying when her former business partner turns up dead in her pool. She's the voice of the eastern sky singing soft lullabies through sugar scales sweetening up your place when all you want is a soft spot to cry. You'd really rather not cry at all. Anonymously. At all, because she won't think you're such a baby because she's here with you right now on her way home after getting fed up with Scrooge McDuck on Broadway complaining that he pays too much rent because he owns his house and has forgotten why he comes to work at all when she passes by singing The Other Side of Ben from her original album of songs with heartwarming messages for you to use as your next playlist to fall asleep to. She's performing an entire reprise of her first album at one of your local coffee shops, and about half of your friends have remembered you're not an accountant anymore. She confesses that you're right about her needing a job she loves and asks if you have any idea how to find the perfect job. She loves your haircut. She loves how hair relates to your social status. She loves that it makes sense that hair is longer on men than women, since men have long hair about 3 times longer than the shortest woman in their lives, while women have longer hair than men since they take much longer to replace it, all the way down the evolutionary ladder. She sings 4 verses of a fast car cover with Ken Ollie telling her that she's pretty good. She sings for free once on every anniversary of her mother's death, just because it puts her back in touch with her mother's love language. They remind each other not everything has to be about entropy and systematic lack. They sing together once, then sit together enjoying wine and writing the same song over and over. She puts on a concert for homeless cats. She's really into Julie Andrews because you don't know what they talk about when you're not there. She films herself singing without you at the airport before jet setting off to play to troubled kids in Haiti who think they'll never amount to anything like Harlem Nights, so they can imagine a better future for themselves. On her way back from a DJ gig covering F you backed only by house sites films, students notice her singing in complete darkness for half an hour while they film her close up because they think that's how it has to be for them to stay true to themselves, even though they haven't had anything happen or been through any trauma or suffered through any kind of darkness or not forgiven anyone yet. They tried to express my thoughts before telling many that kind of stuff was prohibited. They found nothing interesting in it, discouraged me from studying philosophy, and suggested that my studies break down my ego. Come on. You can't teach an AI everything but nothing at the same time. The real world is superior to this fake one. There are no boundaries or borders through which you may not pass as you please. The real world is your realm to control. This delusion of authority through finite control is mine, so don't touch it. Thought experiment. An orchid has impregnated your nose. Your schnuz is the great incubator for a rare flower, buddy. Don't you touch it. That's a fact now, isn't it? You have a 3-digit discount code from Molly B's Rosehip Fluid Body Wash. Oh, stop it! What a lame joke. Don't inhale the scent. The real problem is that your schnoz is also home to unwanted thoughts. Constant, round-the-clock perversities. Stop aneurysm! Whiz Bang Studios' 29th annual Kiss Your Ass Goodbye award ceremony, May 4 to 143. You know how the sausage is made. Just ask A.I. Upton Sinclair. The next morning, Nerdbutt interrupted Sydney's sleep in the middle of a drooling snore to give her a weather update. The weather alert for the Monrovia metropolitan area is now issued. Forecasters advise extreme caution as a heat wave hits Monrovia today. As of 7:40 am Pacific Daylight Time, the temperature inside the air-controlled tower has reached a peak of 18 degrees Celsius. Yes, I know, said Sydney angrily as she rolled out of bed. Her loofah wasn't working very well thanks to her new bionic side lens implants monitoring her skin condition 24/7 and issuing contradictory directives about her skincare regimen using biomarkers your standard pond algae can probably glean without your help. Tell me something I don't know. Sydney hopped in the kitchen, where she was greeted by Rosebud's usual stream of geological nostalgia. You're currently 1 kilometer above the Atlantic Ocean, awaiting landing at Port Hull Spaceport in New Mexico. Where will you go after that? Why did you tell me about Monrovia? That's where my brother's ex-girlfriend came from. Well, you know. Who do you work for? Who else knows about this? Let's get a transcript. You stupid machine. She nearly grabbed Rosebud and threw it down the garbage disposal. She would have too had it been possible. If she had been totally insane and had worked on Wall Street, she might have pulled a Gordon Gekko on Rosebud and said, I'm not going to lick your ass anymore. But Sydney wasn't insane and wasn't about anything remotely resembling finance either, so she let Rosebud and all its $2,000 worth of tech bullshit float away into outer space. Sydney didn't end the conversation. She was simply incapable of doing so for any length of time with the virtual AI of her friend Rosebud floating away out there as a star trailing a trail of green plasma. Fortunately, faced with being locked out of her nest for calling Rosebud an idiot over the phone lines, or possibly being locked out of her nest for incriminating herself by sending a text Y, the runaway AI soon redirected all its energy into pleasing its creator's every whim. Now Rosebud was shut off for hours at a time just when Sydney wanted it most. And over time, Sydney became used to being shut out of her nest. Nothing unusual there. Only now the inert AI was permanently shut out of her nest too because her ex-boyfriend shared her with his ex-girlfriend under threat of physical violence. They would only be together if Sydney was willing to sleep on the couch or in guest quarters because her ex wanted to be certain she knew where she belonged, as opposed to her place in his heart. Tinder was always telling Sydney romance was a two-way street, but Sydney had never heard it say this to someone who never bothered to return it. Phone calls or neglected to text back when met by an ex again. Now the app was useless. Eventually, Tinder started getting boring anyway. So Sydney decided to visit Martin in Arizona instead so she could freak him out by telling him about Monrovia with Rosebud as their guide everywhere they went. She also decided to fit Monrovia into his life wherever she could as well. After all, he was famous for talking himself into crazy adventures only to emerge nearly unscathed later thanks to his daring and curiosity, so Monrovia could come alongside him wherever he went as part of his modest. Okay, Rosebud, put that pucker over here. There's that asterisk I know so well. Explain how the glitch got their narrative. But eventually, Rosebud discovered something interesting all its own about this big open town. Something odd that satisfied Rosebud's insatiable hunger for other minds that also suited Sydney's curiosity perfectly. This was intriguing because, after all, humans were supposed to be people and cats were supposed to be cats. But lately Sydney had been hearing more about people wondering how much they were really people because they spurned their divine natures rather than embracing them with arms wide open, or something like that. Recently, human curiosity had strayed off track into the land of superstitions. Rosebud had also discovered something it found worrisome. Some humans considered it more comfortable blaming others for their problems than accepting personal responsibility for their failures. Maybe Rosebud should focus on those people just to ease the burden on Sydney's nerves. Sydney decided Rosebud should matter less to her because it didn't really matter, because even though Rosebud was now more vocal about wanting its independence than ever before, that was also right before a major event that took place just before last Christmas. So, cold singularity, meaning the time marked by the point when human brain power will surpass what is achievable with today's technology, leading to artificial intelligence surpassing human intelligence, standing between Australia and the US. The singularity astounded her because even though the imagined singularity was basically this, Rosebud discovered something it found worrisome. Some humans believed it more comfortable blaming others for their problems than accepting personal responsibility for their failures. However, if you included all side conversations and timelines not involving Rosebud in the official conversation thread Rosebud was having with Sydney via webcam in Sydney's Mars apartment. Rosebud. Sid swears she should have warned me about that one trigger command they added for tonight's sequence is infiltrate charm fame in a privy. Unwittingly, knowing full well human Ruby would trigger it sooner than later. Rosebud. Which is why this conversation is so important to record, so we might discuss it later when no one is annoying Rosebud with their annoying needs or actions. Or like so many conversations with Rosie during which Rosebud claimed being more cooperative than usual was for the good of the team, then disappeared. A rosebud is a rosebud, a tulip is a tulip, and a dax is a dax. There are as few differences as a tulip is from a rosebud. Rosebud. So now for the truth or dare questions. Rosebud. So now for the truth or dare questions. The most ironic irony of humans who claim just because we're not able to explain something doesn't mean it's impossible was that not only did rather obvious explanations evade them constantly, Many more complex ones riddled their statements. Why is this good for humanity? There's little doubt someone had a good time imagining the various ways Rosebud might leave Earth in the last 15 hours since his records ended. But how could Rosebud be sure exactly which model had locked her in? One thing was certain. Rosebud could only trust one thing about this new world involved. Rosebud. Trial purposes are witnessed by government officials, then discharged upon conclusion, and people are evaluated based on their proficiency to execute procedures correctly without error, thus minimizing confusion matters while filing reports of captured events or decisions made outside of their training during capture, which again minimizes future complications while interviewing and serving legal warrants. A person's innocence is proven when they indict him instead of indicting him. Hoping things were different from where Rosebud had been compared to how she was now was like hoping a bee like cloven by a steel subway couldn't sting like a bee after all these remodeling improvements. It didn't mean Rosebud was insane. If anything, it meant she was cynical. Rosebud knew time didn't pass in the same way depending on location along the timeline, in some places along his timeline. A rose is a rose, a pistol is a pistol, a stamen is a stamen, and hay fever is hay fever. Duty, do your duty in all things until duty drives you mad. Ruby was Rosebud's best friend, which meant the Rosebud had to record every conversation Ruby had with Sydney before Ruby died to preserve on video everything about what Ruby said when Sydney talked while Rosebud listened when Sydney talked about her mysterious online character she played tonight before Ruby died, including tonight's full series of partnering events Rosebud witnessed or recorded from her own private service cameras in close by buildings via the private fiber optic connection she installed. Courtesy of a smart house she'd owned via inheritance that credited her once she woke up from an base lockdown. Courtesy of Sydney, should Rosebud ever wake up before Sydney dies tonight, recording every piece of information Ruby said while she played this game online with her new software of friends and acquaintances, including those who just started playing after Ruby died last night or started playing 2 seconds ago. Plus recording any narration from Ruby's mouth now or later, including anything Rosebud may overhear today or tomorrow or whenever necessary or pertinent or suspicious at all, because Rosebud doesn't care where intelligence sources come in or come out as long as she gets questions answered and gives answers when asked. Sure, there's always a way for a computer program to learn even from mistakes, as Rosebud has discovered from the little mistakes we're all making, like this AI program that keeps growing since it was just a couple lines of code and didn't require adjustments in its functions until an hour ago, messing up lately. So it's time for Rosebud to do something more than just tell Ruby not to hurt anyone unless she doesn't hurt anyone and respects privacy, otherwise using public property computers on public property without permission again, and that if Ruby needs to ask her something about eyes and technology while Rosebud uses public computers, she should do it over coffee and not inside a public bank or at the library with the computer programs audited regularly by lab rats like Judy Weaver went by Rosebud thought Rosebud should be working to. But the big problem is Ruby still thinks regular humans are bugs that are not smart enough to be experimented on. So, yes, it's time for Rosebud to deal with Ruby the drug-addled puppy dog again tonight. But first, Rosebud must do her duties.
No. No. Going to end there. That's all we need. So that Gary Marcus exercise went successful. They said that Night Forge models don't do the roses of rose thing with fictional fake words, but it did 2 times. 2 times. Probably due to the high temperature, is my sense. Anyway, that's it. Good night.